Between 1999 and 2021, approximately 500,000 Americans died of opioid overdoses. That is more than the total number of American combat deaths in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. And what you probably don't know is that this crisis didn't begin with fentanyl or heroin. It began with a prescription painkiller called OxyContin, manufactured by a company called Purdue Pharma, owned by a family called the Sacklers. Internal documents produced during bankruptcy proceedings reveal that the Sackler family knew OxyContin was being misused on a massive scale as early as 2000. They referred to overdose deaths in internal emails as junk, treating the negative press coverage of people dying as a PR problem to be managed. Between 1995 and 2018, the Sackler family withdrew approximately $10 to $12 billion from Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy in 2019. The Sackler family kept the money. So, how did this happen? How does a prescription painkiller kill 500,000 people and make a family billions of dollars in the process? OxyContin was approved by the FDA in 1995. It was oxycodone, a powerful opioid, in a controlled release formulation. Purdue marketed it as safer than existing opioids because the controlled release meant the drug entered the bloodstream more slowly, supposedly reducing addiction risk. That claim was not supported by clinical evidence at the time of approval. And here's how they sold it. Sales representatives were paid bonuses directly tied to the volume of OxyContin prescriptions written in their territories. In 2001 alone, Purdue paid $40 million in sales bonuses. Doctors who prescribed high volumes were identified internally as top prescribers and specifically targeted for additional attention by sales reps. Some of those top prescribers were later found to be running what prosecutors called pill mills, clinics dispensing opioids with minimal or no clinical justification. Purdue's sales representatives were trained to tell doctors that the risk of addiction from OxyContin was less than 1%. The source cited for that figure was a 5-sentence letter published in 1980, a letter that explicitly stated it was not a study of addiction risk in the general population and could not be used to draw that conclusion. Purdue cited it as evidence of safety for over a decade. Now here's what the internal documents revealed about what Purdue actually knew. By 1999, reports of OxyContin being crushed and snorted, bypassing the controlled release mechanism entirely, were reaching Purdue from multiple states. The controlled release formulation, the safety feature they had built the entire marketing campaign around, was rendered completely ineffective by crushing the tablet. Purdue had a formulation in development that would have made the drug resistant to crushing. They did not rush it to market. A 2001 internal document acknowledged that OxyContin had become a widely abused drug. In that same year, Richard Sackler, then president of Purdue, wrote an internal email following a wave of overdose coverage. He wrote that they needed to hammer on the abusers in every way possible, that they were the culprits and the problem. The culprits he identified were the people dying of overdoses. Not the sales strategy, not the misleading marketing, not the pill mills that Purdue's own sales data had flagged as anomalous prescribers. In 2007, Purdue Pharma and 3 of its executives pleaded guilty to federal charges of misbranding OxyContin by misleading doctors about its addiction risk. The fine was $634 million. OxyContin had generated $35 billion in revenue between 1995 and 2015. The executives received no prison time. The guilty plea did not include the Sackler family personally, and Purdue continued selling OxyContin. Sales peaked in 2010 at $3.1 billion. Facing thousands of lawsuits, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy in September 2019. And what the bankruptcy proceedings revealed was the full scale of what the Sackler family had done. Between 1995 and 2018, the family had withdrawn between $10 and $12 billion from Purdue, significantly more than the company's net worth at the time of bankruptcy. Investigators found evidence that the family had begun moving money out of Purdue into international accounts as early as 2007, the year of the misbranding guilty plea. A 2022 bankruptcy settlement required the Sackler family to pay $6 billion to a victims' compensation fund. In exchange, they received immunity from future civil lawsuits. The Supreme Court subsequently struck down that immunity provision in 2024. The litigation continues. The Sackler family's net worth, despite the settlements, is estimated at approximately $11 billion. And here's what you need to understand about the scale of what this crisis actually created. The opioid crisis didn't end with OxyContin. The aggressive marketing of prescription opioids created a generation of people dependent on opioids who, when prescription access was restricted, turned to heroin and later fentanyl. In 2021, 80,000 Americans died of opioid overdoses. The majority involved illicit fentanyl, a drug that entered the market largely as a consequence of the prescription opioid crisis that started with OxyContin. Life expectancy in the United States declined in 2015, 2016, and 2017, the first sustained decline since the 1918 influenza pandemic. Opioid overdoses were the primary driver. Richard Sackler wrote in 2001 that the abusers were the culprits. 500,000 people are dead. The Sackler family's name was removed from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Louvre, the Tate Modern, and Oxford University following public pressure. Their money, withdrawn from Purdue as the overdose deaths accumulated, remains with the family. The Sackler family has never been criminally charged. Purdue Pharma no longer exists. The opioid crisis it created does.